That is so foundational to new believers, isn't it? Because they are so susceptible to be tossed to and fro and carried about by every wind of doctrine, according to Ephesians. There's a vulnerability among those who have just begun to see the light. Beware of the present, ever-present influences of legalism, liberalism, secularism. Leaven is a biblical illustration of permeation, influence. Yeast is what it is. Yeast makes dough rise by bacterial corruption. This is what that is talking about. By the way, leaven twice in the New Testament is used positively in Matthew 13:33 and Luke 13:21 to speak of the advance of the kingdom. Every other time it is used to speak of the evil permeating influence of sin as it is used here. You need to be warned that you're still going to be surrounded by the Pharisaic religion. You're still going to be surrounded by the Sadducean liberalism. You're still going to be surrounded by the influences of Herodian secularism. And all of these have an invisible, permeating, corrupting power when you're exposed to them. The leaven of the Sadducees was the leaven of liberalism. They denied the supernatural. The leaven of the Pharisees was the leaven of the influence, of the corrupting influence of legalism, externalism. The leaven of Herod, the corrupting influence of being politically engaged. And they all rejected Christ, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Herodians. And they all came together, even though they were enemies of each other, against him. Jesus is urging a full break with all the satanic ideologies of the past. Because all those things had influenced them. When you come to Christ, you set everything in the past aside. You make a clean break with all past ideologies. Verse 16, here's their response. They began to discuss with one another the fact that they had no bread. What? Look, I've only got a couple of minutes to talk about what Jesus said in verse 15, and you could preach forever. There's so much in that. I'd be asking 100 questions. Well, how can I recognize the leaven? How do I know when I'm succumbing to it? How do I avoid it? What do I do to insulate myself against it? What are we going to do to provide an alternative? But there are 100 questions. And they're looking at each other and saying, what are we going to do for lunch? What? Is it any wonder, if you question the patience of Jesus, you don't know this. How patient was he with them? Some spiritual blindness definitely remained. They were comfortable with the light. They loved being with Jesus and being with others who wanted to be with Jesus. But they needed more light, and that's the second point. They were conducted to greater light. They miss the entire meaning of the warning. You want to know the truth? In Matthew 16:12, it says, when Jesus said leaven, they thought he was talking about actual bread. You know, here Jesus is warning, beware, watch out. And he's talking, and they're so preoccupied with lunch that all they hear is the word leaven, and they think he's warning them to make sure they don't eat leavened bread. Stick with the flat bread. What? You know, it's a scary thing. But in the goodness of the Lord, they are conducted to greater light. Now, remember, the Pharisees and the Sadducees had said, show us a sign, show us a sign. Give us more light. You've rejected all the light you've had. No more light. The people who are permanently in the darkness are comfortable with the darkness. They're only going to experience more darkness, and they're going to be condemned to everlasting darkness. But those who are in the light, who are comfortable with the light, will be conducted to greater light. And the Lord shows his patience here. And in verse 17, Jesus, aware of this, he's obviously aware of their conversation. I said to them, why do you discuss the fact that you have no bread? Why is this such a dominating issue that you aren't hearing anything I'm saying that is so absolutely critical? You know, you would think this was a class of third graders who can't pay attention. Then a series of rhetorical questions. Do you not yet see or understand? Do you have a hardened heart? Having eyes, do you not see? Having ears, do you not hear? All of those statements they were familiar with because Jesus had already told them earlier that those things apply to the people to whom he has hidden the truth. But he said, as I quoted in Matthew 13, to you it has been given to know the mysteries, to understand. And now he's saying, are you no better than they are? Are you as dark as they are? This is rhetorical. No wonder he warned them about their influence. And do you not remember, he says? Do you not remember? When I, verse 19, broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many baskets full of broken pieces you picked up? They said, sure, we remember 12. And when I broke the 7 for the 4,000, how many large baskets full of broken pieces did you pick up? And they said to him, 7. Do you remember? Do you remember a few weeks ago when I fed the 5,000 men plus women and children, a crowd of 25,000? Sure. We remember the 12 baskets, one for each of the apostles. Do you remember the feeding of the 4,000? That was, by the way, in chapter 8, verse 1 through 8. That's immediately before this. This is like days before. A few days. That, then they cross, then they go back. Have you forgotten? No, we remember 7. I just fed 20,000 people twice, at least, and you're worried about lunch on the boat? Don't you remember? Isn't it astonishing that in the present moment, in the stress of the present moment, we forget the fulfillments of God's care in the past? Why in the world are you thinking about that when you ought to think about the dangerous things that are going to influence your soul? But he's gentle with this. And he says, do you not yet understand? As if to say, what more do I need to do? And sometimes all you need to understand the moment is the past, right? Right? All you need to understand the present is the past. The past is the best indicator of how to view the present. If God has been faithful in the past, he'll be faithful in the present. If he's provided in the past, he can provide in the present. They needed to be seeking the kingdom, right? They needed to remember the Sermon on the Mount if they could remember that far back. Don't take any thought for what you shall eat or drink. Seek the kingdom and I'll take care of the rest. Do you not yet understand? Matthew is very explicit in his parallel account. Matthew 16:12. Listen.